We've talked about Dollar General several times on the channel in the past, especially over the past year or so. They were having a lot of trouble with their customer base, not making as many sales as they were hoping to, as well as making plans to close many of their stores. Well, the Dollar General CEO, he just came out this week and pretty much gave another economic warning, saying that customers only have enough money for the basic essentials right now. So that's an underlying theme that we've been talking about a lot here on the channel. And I think it's good that people like this, big CEOs of big companies are finally starting to step forward and confirm this, because now it's not just hearsay on YouTube. Oh, I heard it from that, guy Michael that just walks around everywhere and thinks he knows what he's talking about. Now it's coming straight from the source, telling you that things are not good. What the CEO of Dollar General said is that inflation is still hurting customers, and customers are expecting value and convenience more than ever, specifically from the dollar store. Our customers continue to report that their financial situation has worsened over the last year, as they have been negatively impacted by ongoing inflation. Many of our customers report they only have enough money for basic essentials, with some noting that they have had to sacrifice even on the necessities, which is very sad that it's coming down to this, guys, and that's why most likely the credit card debt has climbed to all-time highs, because people are having to sacrifice on the essentials, and some are choosing not to make that sacrifice and are just putting it on the charge card instead. He goes, as we enter 2025, we are not anticipating improvement in the macro environment, particularly for our core customer. I share exactly the same sentiment. Anybody who thinks that in 2025 we're going to have some miraculous economic recovery and things are going to be amazing by the end of the year, it is not going to happen, guys. Do I think that eventually we're going to make an economic recovery and things will turn around? Yes. When? I have no idea. But it ain't going to be this year. I'm fairly confident about that. And you don't have to listen to me. Some people like to argue in the comments about whatever, saying, oh, you said this and said that and blah, 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 blah. You were wrong about this, you're wrong about that. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, you don't have to watch. That's as simple as it is. Like, nobody is forcing you to click on YouTube videos, right? But there's a lot of people out there that do want to hear what I have to say, because I report the truth, at least as close to the truth as I can find and dig up. Sometimes I might be wrong about things, but if I ever am, it's never intentional. Another thing that the CEO of Dollar General said, he said, given the already stressed financial condition of our core customer, we are closely monitoring these and any other potential economic headwinds, including any changes to government and entitlement programs. Now, what I gather from that statement is that's mainly referring to the fact that, DOGE has been in there making all sorts of different cuts with government programs, and by doing so, there may be less people that get food stamps, less people that get welfare, which is probably a substantial part of the customer base for Dollar General, which obviously can impact sales even further. Dollar General also announced this week that they're going to close 96 Dollar General stores and 45 pOpshelf stores, and will convert 6 other pOpshelf stores into flagship banner locations this year. And they also said, this is a key thing for the economy at large here, is the company said their same store sales growth of 1.2% for the quarter was driven entirely by 2.3% growth in the average transaction amount. Customer traffic, though, actually fell 1.1% during that period, impacted by ongoing financial pressures of the core customer. What have we been talking about here, guys? What have we talked about, especially when it comes to like McDonald's, for example? They're a perfect example going through the same exact situation, right? They are in a situation where, people might be spending a little bit more at McDonald's. The average transaction amount is higher, but their customer foot traffic is lower. And what that means is less people are coming into places like Dollar General and McDonald's, but they spend more, not because they're wealthy or because they're just buying so much more food, because the prices are higher. So naturally they spend more because the prices are a lot higher than they were just a couple of years ago. By the way, I'm walking next to one of my favorite restaurants here in Miami, Houston's. It's right behind me. They have this awesome path over here that kind of goes through this little sort of mangrove forest where we've been walking through here and along the bay. So never did a video here before, kind of a cool spot. American Eagle, the clothing company, they also came out this week and talked about how their sales have been dipping lately due to slowing in consumer spending. And you know, unlike Dollar General, these Dollar General pretty much sells essentials. They have groceries and items. It's like kind of like a convenience store for the most part. American Eagle came out this week and it warned investors, saying that consumers are pulling back on spending and it's been a slower start to the year than it expected. Now, American Eagle sells basically overpriced clothes that are not made in America. So, you know, basically you can buy the same items from Target or Walmart for much less money. You know, it's jeans, t-shirts, things that are considered to be fashionable. H&M is probably a huge competitor too. They sell like fashionable-ish type of clothes for very low price, all made by little children overseas. The quote is funny though, because they always try to bring the weather into the mix. They say, entering 2025, the first quarter is off to a slower start than expected, reflecting less robust demand and colder weather. So somehow the cold weather is a reflection of lower demand, even though everybody can buy anything they want these days online. So yeah, pretty poor excuse, but these are the things they come up with now. And it sounds like layoffs could be around the corner for a company like American Eagle based on the next quote here, because they say, while we anticipate improvement as the spring season gets underway, we are also taking proactive steps to strengthen the top line, manage inventory, and reduce expenses as we navigate through an uncertain consumer and operating landscape. We will also remain focused on our long-term strategic priorities. And you know, how these CEOs and the Fed and all these guys, I mean, they must all go to the same school of language to come up with all this mumbo jumbo, guys, because really all that means is probably we're going to be letting some people go because that's the easiest way to reduce expenses, and that's what every company trying to reduce expenses right now is doing. And could also mean that we're going to be closing down stores, which is another strategy we've seen a lot of companies do lately. In fact, that kind of leads straight into the next part of the story, because the company said that they still have a very large mall footprint, and obviously malls are kind of a dying breed in this country. And because traffic is still down significantly at US malls, that means fewer people are coming into their American Eagle stores. On the other hand, online sales are expected to be positive during the first quarter this year, while store sales are expected to fall steeper than single digits. So they're talking double-digit declines in store sales while hopefully seeing an increase in online sales. So this to me almost guarantees that a company like American Eagle is going to be closing stores, and guess what? People who work at those stores are going to lose their jobs, because one of their plans is to move some of its stores to locations outside of malls. And they're also working on remodeling their existing stores, because the average store is about 12 years old right now, and they're working to get that average down to about 7 years old. Even before this, American Eagle was reporting tough financial times, because prior to this announcement that they were contending with an uncertain economic environment and a consumer that tends to only come out and shop during key moments, probably like during holidays or big sales events, things like that. And now it's not just American Eagle saying this. A lot of different retailers are coming out and saying the same exact thing. And listen, a slowing economy is bad news for any retailer or any business in general, but it's specifically bad for those who sell discretionary goods like brand new clothes that are overpriced, that no one really needs. But ultimately, the CEO of American Eagle says the biggest thing that is affecting shoppers is uncertainty. They have the fear of the unknown, not just the tariffs, not just inflation. They see the government cutting people off. They don't know how that's going to affect them. They see programs being cut. They don't know how that's going to affect them. They just don't know how any of this is going to play out. And so people get, financially conservative, which is the right thing to do. That's what I've been telling people to do here for a few years now on the channel, because me and others like me have kind of seen this problem building and coming for a long time. This is not like a surprise that we are in this situation right now, guys. Anybody who's been watching my channel for any given amount of time knows that I've been talking about this for a long time, so this should not come as a surprise. One thing that many of us have lost control over is how our personal data is being used, shared, distributed, and even sold online. And that's why today's video is sponsored by Delete Me. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. Delete Me's privacy experts will remove you from hundreds of data brokers all year long. And I have been working with Delete Me since January of 2024, and over this time period from then until now, they have reviewed over 22,000 listings on my behalf in order to remove hundreds and hundreds of different companies that have had my data and no longer do. And these companies have things like your name, your address, your marital status, your past addresses, your relatives' info, your court records, all sorts of things that is up for grabs. So make sure to get 20% off your Delete Me subscription by joining today using my link down below at joindeleteme.com/Bordenero, or use the QR code on the screen. Now, Walmart is one of those companies that is still doing fairly well, but they are contending with some issues of their own, mainly when it comes to negotiating prices with China now that the tariffs on China have increased. Now, we talked a little bit about this story last week, but now there's been some new developments on it. And what's happening is, of course, Walmart is trying to pressure its Chinese suppliers to lower their prices and basically eat the tariffs, which is what the Trump administration is hoping that all foreign countries and businesses do, which is unlikely to happen. But in Walmart's case, they have a lot more pull and leverage than the average company. So what Walmart's doing is they are using the sheer size of the company and the sheer volume and amount of items and goods that they purchase from China to use that as leverage and negotiating power to try and influence China to take the hit with the tariffs. And let's face it, they do have quite a bit more bargaining power than the average company. In fact, Walmart told their suppliers to cut their prices by 10%, which is basically the extra tariff that was levied on China. So Walmart wants China to eat the full amount. And about 80% of Walmart's suppliers are located in China. So that could be a good or a bad thing for Walmart in terms of how this is going to play out for them. But it's looking like Walmart is inevitably going to start passing some of these costs along to the customer, and China is not going to be eating the full tariff amount. Walmart's plan is to negotiate with suppliers on an individual level, but most suppliers claim that they cannot afford to cut their costs that much because the retailer already expects low prices from suppliers, so products can remain highly affordable for consumers. And their margins are so thin, they claim, at least in China, which is probably true, but this is what they say. For Chinese suppliers, even a 2% cut would mean that they would have to sell their products at a loss. So there's almost no wiggle room at all for a lot of these suppliers, according to them. But check this out. It says for Walmart, it appears the priority is raising prices as little as possible for customers, even at the cost of chipping away at its gross margin so its products remain cheaper than competitors. Keeping prices lower than other retailers has contributed to Walmart's strength over the years. So the company's stock is up 40% over the past 12 months, and it usually lures in shoppers away from other higher priced retailers with the promise of low prices. But even Walmart's economic outlook for 2025 is starting to sour because they recently lowered their outlook for 2025 in terms of their sales projections. So even a behemoth like Walmart is thinking that they're going to see a slowdown in sales due to the tariffs and due to the economic uncertainty. And I really do think it boils down to uncertainty as the largest contributor to all of this. Like, obviously people are running out of money. That's a huge problem and definitely contributes to people not making the purchases like they were a couple years ago. But just by not knowing what's going to happen next, especially if you're in a somewhat vulnerable position in life, whether it's financially or with your job, something like that, if you feel like you are in limbo in some way, or you live off the government, you get welfare or food stamps or whatever, then you, and people like that in particular, are going to be much more afraid of spending any extra dollars right now, not knowing what their future holds. But there's even an argument out there that say that the tariffs could actually end up helping Walmart, because if customers are looking for value and being more conscientious of prices that they're paying, then they could drive more customers to Walmart, which generally has the lowest prices in the retail industry. And since Walmart has the most negotiating power of essentially any retailer in the world, this could actually help Walmart. But after reading and going through all of this, I still feel like I'm coming to the same conclusion as last week, which is that, it's going to be a combination of everybody who's going to eat these tariffs. Prices on things at Walmart are going to go up slightly. At the same time, Walmart is going to take a hit on a portion of the tariffs. And at the same time, suppliers will take a hit of a percentage of the tariffs. Now let's talk a minute about inflation, because everybody's celebrating the fact that the CPI report came in just slightly lower than what the expectation was, okay? The expectation for the latest CPI reading was going to be at 2.9%, and it came in at 2.8%, and everybody's celebrating that, okay? But that had basically no impact on the stock market. They are still hurting right now. Things are not recovering in that department. And let's face it, 2.8% is still not 2%, like we have been promised and lied to over the last several years, correct? The CPI still went up 0.2 percentage points on a seasonally adjusted basis. And the reason why people are happy about this, because it went up by 0.5 percentage points in January on a seasonally adjusted basis. But take a look at this. The index for shelter rose 0.3% in February, which accounted for nearly half of all of the monthly items increase, okay? And the thing that made the inflation reading go down overall is airline fares and a decline in gas prices. And I even saw the decline in gas prices here. Last time I filled up in Miami, it was like $3.19 a gallon. Yesterday, I just got it for $2.97 a gallon. So that is actually true. But food went up 0.2%, and food away from home went up 0.4%. Other things that increased were medical care, used cars and trucks, furniture, recreation, clothing, and personal care. In fact, when you take a look at the CPI chart here on all the things that went up and went down, housing is still one of the biggest offenders here, guys. Shelter is up 4.2% year over year, and the only things that are worse than that are transportation services, and then utility gas prices, probably like natural gas, and that's pretty much it. So let's recap what this means. It means that food and shelter are still on the rise, still going up in price, not coming down, okay? And the only thing that's coming down slightly is gas prices. So that is a small relief for people, because nobody wants to pay high gas prices. But let's face it, even if you drive a lot and you commute every day back and forth to work, gas is still a smaller portion of your monthly budget compared to something like rent or your mortgage or insurance or feeding yourself and your family. Nobody spends as much on gasoline per month as they spend on those items. And those are the items that are still going up. So it's no wonder that even though the CPI reading came in a little bit lower than expected, it's still not great news for the economy. And other measures of inflation are not doing great either, okay? The PPI, the Producer Price Index, is still sitting at 3.2%, well above the 2% number the Fed is hoping for. The PCE, which is typically the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, is still sitting at 2.5% right now. And when you take a look at this chart going back about a year ago, the PCE has remained relatively flat. It was starting to dip a little bit during last summer, but has since gone back up, guys. Draw a straight line through there. There's basically been no change. And that's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. And don't forget, they started cutting interest rates back in September, right when you saw that graph start to dip. They saw that and they're like, oh, this is our chance. It's time to start cutting rates. But now that the PCE has risen back up to where it was a year ago, you haven't seen them increase rates, right? So it's funny how it's a one-way street with them. They're, always in a hurry to lower interest rates, but are always way behind the curve on raising them. So just looking at and reviewing all the data that we talked about in today's video is a pretty clear indicator, if you ask me, that we are not going to see any meaningful recovery in this economy anytime soon, which is okay, because we need to see things come down. Oh, is that a duck? I don't know what it is. Somebody's talking to us. The real thing to understand about whether or not this economic recovery will be successful or not, if we're going to be able to bounce back from this and how well we will be able to bounce back, is how much interference we're going to see. Okay, because the more the government tries to meddle in this, the more they try to influence the outcome and basically not let this much needed recession happen, then the worse things will ultimately be. That's how we got exactly to this point that we are in right now, because that's what they did during COVID, right? They injected a tremendous amount of cash and stimulus into the economy, came up with all these programs trying to save us from a huge downturn that would have been catastrophic, supposedly, which I don't think would have been true, especially if they would not have done the lockdowns. The lockdowns is what really messed everything up. We wouldn't have needed all that stimulus if they didn't do the lockdowns. But regardless, the more they try to come in and save the day like they usually do, then the worse off we're all going to be. Even if there is some temporary relief, it is going to be just longer term and higher pain in the end. So we'll see, and of course I'll keep you posted. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.